Alright guys, it's time to do another Stormgate review again. To me it feels like Groundhog Day because I've already covered this game multiple times this year and honestly I'm getting a bit tired of it. But now it's finally out of early access, well, sort of, as it's once again very complicated, but anyway, let's dive into it. First of all, I've got to say, this game has gotten much better. Over the past year we've seen the devs working tirelessly on it, and now it actually feels like a proper, full-fledged product, packed with interesting content. I'm going to break this review into 3 parts. First, we'll talk about the campaign, missions, story, level design, atmosphere, and we'll compare that to StarCraft 2. And of course there will be campaign and plot spoilers, I will be studying different missions and talking about them, so be aware of that. Then we'll move to co-op and multiplayer. At the moment the only available campaign is for Vanguard. It starts with a really powerful intro. Your ship emerges into Earth's orbit and you see what the planet has turned into. I have to admit, it sets the tone perfectly and makes a strong first impression. It genuinely feels epic.
No one knew what to expect. But we didn't expect this.
This is not my first time playing this campaign though. I played the first 6 original missions, then the 6 remade missions, and now I finally got access to the full campaign. So in some missions I still had that deja vu feeling, like if I've somehow become a Frost Giant beta tester, and hopefully I won't have to play this thing again after yet another remake, or my Groundhog is gonna lose it. Because of that, my impressions might differ a bit from someone's first run, but still, I was pleasantly surprised by this new release. Just like in StarCraft 2, you've got a massive spaceship at your disposal, where you, playing as Amara, can interact with various characters before getting your mission briefing. The story begins with an attempt to land in Iceland at a lab where the main character spent her childhood and lost her father. And I've got to say, the mission starts beautifully. A flight through a snowstorm, deploying a small strike team. It immediately gives me Rainer's Raiders vibes and visually it's just stunning. Stormgate now really looks like eye candy. The environments throughout the game are gorgeous, the kind you just want to stop and look at. The new weather effects complement them perfectly, and the engine is finally showing its full potential. But here is what I really did not like: the optimization. I'll leave my PC specs in the video description, but just for comparison, recently I played the Battlefield 6 Open Beta. That game is also very demanding and incredibly pretty. Yet, even on my potato PC it ran smoothly with barely any FPS drops. Stormgate, on the other hand, heated my rig up to the limit, and some cutscenes dropped below 15 FPS, making them really hard to watch. And I'm sorry about my performance dips in my footage, but I really think Frost Giant needs to work on optimization. Since Stormgate is aiming to be a free-to-play multiplayer game, most players simply won't be able to enjoy it comfortably if it runs like this. Any free-to-play game on the market needs to run on potatoes if it wants to grow its player base. But back to the mission, it's really cool. You clear out the abandoned lab while piecing together what happened there, the horror, fear and hopelessness people felt at the start of the catastrophe and the demon invasion. The outside weather amplifies that loneliness and cold seeping from the setting. Amara collects items that improve her combat stats and eventually reaches the archives to download data while fighting off hordes of demons. Time to escape, except the exit is blocked by a giant inferno that terrifies everyone on screen. We find another way through and reach a lift where we unexpectedly come across another survivor who's been asleep in a capsule this whole time. Together, we return to the ship. The first mission does a great job of setting the tone for this world. The war is lost, humanity now survives somewhere in space on asteroids and ships, their home planet forever scarred by this invasion. You command only a small squad trying to take back control, but that sense of fatalism and inevitable doom never leaves you. In a way, it's similar to StarCraft 2's opening, where Rainer is just a washed-up drunk alcoholic running small raids against the Dominion, hoping things will eventually get better. On the ship you talk with other crew members and slowly piece together more about what's happening. In the second mission, our trustworthy partner Blockade sends us to clear out a small district in Rio de Janeiro and destroy an infernal monolith. And once again, Stormgate hits with the gloom, a ruined city shrouded in demonic fog, no humans in sight, only traces of desperate lust stands. We rebuild the base, destroy the monolith and learn about Malok, an enormous infernal who will spend the rest of this game sending us empty threats. Compared to the original campaign, the new version does a much better job immersing the player in the universe. Aside from the dialogues, it finally has solid environmental storytelling that clearly shows what happened and why. And visually, it's flawless, the game is really beautiful. But at the same time, Stormgate still has a few issues that really break that immersion. First, the voice acting for archaeologist Tara. It's just goofy, so are many other conversations in this game, and I think that's a small problem. I'm not a native speaker, but it feels less like a conversation on a starship orbiting a destroyed planet, and more like a chat in a Starbucks in LA.
Hey, Mar. Oh, they thought we were flat out nuts. It took every bit of evidence we had to win them over, and honestly, I think they're still skeptical. On the bright side, Inferno's left plenty of traces if you know where to look.
Her upbeat tone and light delivery clash hard with the general sense of despair among the characters. Sure, I know people handle stress differently and maybe some people just try to be overly positive, but I ended up skipping all those Disney-style dialogues faster and faster as I went on. Second, the devs didn't have time to animate character portraits, so they used AI instead. Personally, I've got nothing against AI in art, but often the emotions look weird or even unintentionally funny. Why does Amara look so happy? What's so happy about this situation?
Nomad, get clear.
Not yet! I can still do this!
And why the expressions are always so exaggerated? It creates a purely comical effect. Honestly, they might have been better off using just static images with a little flickering radio-style waveform instead. Anyway, in the third mission we learned that there are still people left on Earth, so we set out to help someone named Riker, who, along with his convoy, is gathering intel from the battlefield. We cover him and help evacuate his forces while running from the giant demon Malok, who leaves nothing but death and destruction in his wake. The most handsome character in this game informs us that there is still an active resistance on Earth, and from the archaeologist we learn about an artifact that can seriously harm our enemies. On our ship we can also purchase army upgrades, either targeted unit-specific upgrades from our engineer or expensive but very powerful global army upgrades from the archaeologist. The items we collect on the battlefield are stored in our inventory and we can give them to our heroes to boost their powers. In the medical lab we can talk to Taggart, who studies infernal matter and how it interacts with the environment. We're also introduced to the Admiral and the head of the Vanguard, who authorizes us to head to Wyoming to assist Riker's partisans. After clearing the area of Infernos, we move on to Mission 5. There is an artifact called the Achelos, which can be used to defeat the Infernals, and it's located in an ancient Mayan temple in Mexico. Amara approaches the artifact, but then something strange happens. She is sucked in or, something like that. Our job now is to hold the line until the unknown process finishes, fighting off both Infernos and the ancient defenses of an unknown race, and those are the Celestials as we later piece it together. All of this takes place against the backdrop of lush green landscapes, still untouched by demons, but blood will soon be spilled here as well. Once the process finishes, we retreat again. Meanwhile, in Cuba, traitors to humanity have allied themselves with the Infernos, and it's our job to take out these Satanists. This is the first unconventional mission. Here we need to stealthily capture enemy structures and turn them against their owners. But just look at how goofy and slowly they come out. Oh, this cutscene just made me chuckle. But Major Gold, is this an Atlas Shrugged reference by the way? Has his own base with a massive artillery cannon we need to infiltrate, and then we battle him using only 2 heroes. By the way, why is he so huge?
And his name is John C.
Who gave him those infernal steroids? In Mission 7, we discover an abandoned station with starships that could greatly strengthen our forces. The problem is, though, it's guarded by a rogue AI who is now attacking everything in sight. Our objective is to infiltrate and destroy it. This is one of the best missions in the campaign, by the way, because it forces you to actively use evacs and it lets you play around with large artillery platforms to defend against an incoming infernal assault. In the end, we defeat the AI, but we don't get to keep the ships, because the Admiral claims them for herself. Mission 8 has us charging our artifact to empower it. It's a classic defense mission, somewhat similar to the artifact theft mission in StarCraft 2 campaign. We fend off both demons and celestials, and it's a pretty straightforward assignment, so let's skip ahead to Mission 9. In San Francisco, we're introduced to a new antagonist named Wars. Seriously, who came up with that name? It's like George Martin naming the biggest dragon in Game of Thrones Drogon. That's just silly. Anyway, along with his death sphere, Wars wipes out the last remnants of life in abandoned city, and we need to evacuate everyone we can, which we managed to do. This mission strongly reminds me of the colonist evacuation in StarCraft 2, when we had to rescue them before the Protoss and Selendis could destroy all of the infected. But suddenly, our evacuation is interrupted because Amara descends with the artifact to confront the enemy. After that, our team realizes that artifact is quite powerful and our team decides to acquire some sort of key for it. We head to Iraq only to fall into Malak's trap and appear in a different dimension, I guess. However, with a large number of Marines, Exotroopers, and the power of the artifact, we send Malak straight to Hell, or Heaven, or whenever demons go, it doesn't really matter. But there is a problem. Sneaky Wars has stolen the artifact from our base while we were standing next to the key. And then, another blow. Back on the ship, the Admiral announces that she is no longer willing to fight for Earth and plans to fortify in space. We're now completely alone, and the team decides to try gathering survivors on Earth to form a resistance and take the artifact back from Wars. On top of that, Riker warns us that the demons are about to open more Stormgates and flood the planet with even more monsters, so time is running out. Our squad heads to Moscow to use a radio tower to broadcast a message to all remaining survivors. This is one of the best missions in the campaign, because the entire area is covered in radiation and our units can't leave the safety of our base's shield dome unless they are deployed with special drones that provide 2 minutes of shielding. Step by step, we make our way to the target, fending off Moscow's demons. When we reach the tower, we start uploading the message. Oddly, the tower looks very generic, and I was a bit surprised because, since San Francisco got its legendary bridge, they maybe could have at least put a stun cannon tower there. It's also quite recognizable. But anyway, it's just nitpicking. The location has amazing environmental storytelling. We see abandoned vehicles and wrecked military hardware from the last war, and now those are just outdated tank prototypes. And then it's time for the last mission, but before it begins, tragedy strikes on the ship. Our medic scientist goes berserk and murders 10 crew members, including one of Riker's friends. Where he went and what happened to him, we don't know, and won't know until a future campaign. This reminded me a bit of the Ariel Hansen lab incident from Wings of Liberty in StarCraft 2, except here it's kinda unclear what happened. Maybe our doctor became too obsessed with demon tech, I'm not so sure. Now for the grand finals. We must break into War's citadel and reclaim the artifact. This is the bloodiest, hardest mission yet, with waves of enemies coming from every direction. Dragons, giant demons from the first mission. The action never stops for a second. And after heavy losses, we finally reach the artifact, where something cool happens, and that's where the campaign ends.
No. Stay back. I'm not done.
Honestly, it plays quite well. Frost Giant really managed to deliver a solid single-player experience with a decent enough plot and varied missions. But I would still give this campaign a 7 out of 10, and here is why. Despite all its strengths, beautiful graphics and map design, decent difficulty progression and lots of interesting features, it still doesn't reach the level of StarCraft 2 or Warcraft 3. Sure, it's strange to compare them, given the budget and studio size, but I want to point out a few things that make StarCraft 2 a masterpiece, while Stormgate is just a good game. But you gotta remember that this game was also created by ex-Blizzard devs who worked on StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, I presume, so they have the necessary experience. And it's not like that making a good storyline and characters requires big funding. It's just how well you can write characters that are relatable to the target audience and just how coherent the main plotline is. And Blizzard succeeded multiple times with that. Now, what about Stormgate? First, when it comes to any game, there is that creation and maintenance of the atmosphere. Stormgate has improved in this area compared to its earlier versions, but the game still suffers from inconsistency in style. What I absolutely love about StarCraft 2 campaign was how skillfully it combined several recurring themes and styles, weaving them together organically. On the one hand, you had that Space Cowboys vibe, where you and your crew robbed trains and hunted for artifacts, and all while a galactic-scale tragedy unfolded off-screen as the Zerg consumed planet after planet. The game had a bright, easygoing side that showcased camaraderie and shared purpose, and even some funny banter between characters and other people on board. Also, StarCraft 2 made it clear that Rainer's Raiders were, at their core, a bunch of rednecks and thugs united by a noble cause, and this came through in everything, from the many hit-and-run styles missions to unique voice lines and even the aesthetics of the spaceship and bar. You feel that vibe throughout the first half of the game, as if you've been introduced to a company of cool kids at school, you know? It's just really cozy and fun. Everything seems so fresh and exciting, and altogether this created an incredibly cozy atmosphere. Because of that, all the major story beats, like Zerathul's grim prophecy or Ariel Hanson's horrific transformation aboard the ship, all of that left a deep impression on the player. The tonal shift hits hard, confronting the player with new realities and emotions, and in addition to that, the game often forced you to make tough moral choices or cooperate with shady characters like Tosh. It also had excellent story progression. It began with small-scale hit-and-run ops, then the pieces started to come together, evolving from local skirmishes to something large-scale and epic. The Space Cowboy theme gave way to Zerathul's mysterious prophecy and the looming apocalypse brought by a different race and a new villain. The stakes kept rising with the theft of Odin and major clashes with the Dominion, and eventually shifted from Jim Raynor's personal revenge against Manx to a galactic showdown between the three races, culminating in the legendary battle against Kerrigan and the Zerg Swarm. Looking back, you really appreciate those warm, laid-back moments in the bar and the easy missions where everything wasn't yet a life of that kind of situation. This contrast was amazing. The fantastic Wings of Liberty soundtrack amplified this even more. Sometimes it was chill and country-like, then it shifted into cosmic epic. When Zerathul appeared, it became dark, mystical and enigmatic. When battle came, it was country rock tracks that kicked in. It perfectly matched every gameplay moment. Stormgate doesn't really have much of that. Starting with the music, it's very backgroundy, you know, and either my audio scripts weren't working properly or I've gone deaf. Either way, it just doesn't enhance the experience much. Often during the epic moments, a generic track plays in the background and it ruins the impression.
Right on our asses. Go!
The red right hand will not be denied. Let the hunt begin.
Right on our asses. Go!
The red right hand will not be denied. Let the hunt
Cutscenes are a bit better, but nothing really impressed me. Now, about themes and contrasts. On the one hand, I get the situation in this game is different. The focus is on a huge planetary catastrophe, and there is no room for jokes. Funny enough though, there are no jokes at all. I don't remember a single moment where at the very least I chuckled or giggled. And even so, the drama at the same time is not sustained to its fullest. The game never pushes that feeling to the maximum. Immersion keeps breaking due to cliché lines or mismatched voice acting and AI portraits. You don't feel any real character dynamics or chemistry. There are actually a lot of characters, but they are all rather flat and uninteresting, and they don't seem to have strong defining traits. They just don't feel alive. In StarCraft 2, almost every character had positive and negative sides. Jim Raynor was a man who had lost hope, at least for a time. He was betrayed by many, yet determined to go on, whether for revenge against Mengsk, or the liberation of humanity, or maybe the fight against the Zerg and Kerrigan. Tychus appeared to be a shameless mercenary, but by the end he revealed a completely different side. I also want to point out how brilliantly StarCraft 2 kept the intrigue and tension going throughout the entire game. From the very first scene, we know there is something fishy about Tychus. He has made some kind of deal with Mengsk, and deep down we spend the whole game suspecting him of something terrible, we just don't know what's gonna be yet. At the same time, we see plenty of moments of friendship with Raynor and genuine teamwork against the Dominion, which makes us start to kinda doubt our suspicions. Maybe the team somehow finds a way around his suit and actually releases him and makes him finally free. We have that lingering hope inside of us. And at the same time, just so we don't let our guard down, the game occasionally throws in scenes between Tychus and Matt where the tension is palpable. Pay attention to how the dialogue is framed and to the music that's playing in the background. These dialogues also serve a big role in explaining the motivation of the two main characters, Jim and Sarah.
That's funny, convict. I don't recall giving you access to our database.
Just keeping up on current events, Captain. Seems this Queen of Blades got everybody running scared. She don't look so tough.
You have no idea who she is, do you, Tychus?
Don't matter to me none.
Well, it matters to Jim. They were close once.
Wait a minute. You're telling me they were shacked up?
Apparently she was something else. Before the Zerg took her. Turned her into that.
And Jimmy feels responsible.
Honestly, if we have to face her again, I don't know what he'll do.
Woman like that, there's only one thing to do.
Here's one example that shows the brilliance of StarCraft 2's writing and attention to details. When Raynor meets Mengsk's ship, he has a revolver with one bullet, meant specifically for his enemy. It's heavily implied that Jim is driven by revenge and at one point he is determined to execute the tyrant. It never happens though, as in the end, Raynor uses that single bullet to shoot Tychus, shielding Kerrigan with his body. This is a powerful metaphor because Raynor has to sacrifice his friend and his later ultimate goal for the greater good, and it was done not because he was, kinda simping for Kerrigan, but because she could stop the swarm from devouring planets and later she could fight Duran and his new race. And it was foreshadowed by Zeratul, so Raynor had to take this difficult decision. Interestingly, in that same scene, Tychus makes his own choice. Back in the Wings of Liberty intro, Mengsk says that freedom has its own price.
They say a man never really knows himself. Until his freedom's been taken away. I wonder, how well do you know yourself?
For Tychus, the price is his own life, and he knows the situation is basically hopeless. Yet, no matter how much of a bastard he was throughout the game, he cannot betray his friend. So Tychus fires just one shot from his rifle instead of unloading the whole magazine into Kerrigan and Raynor, because his moral principles outweigh the rational and self-serving choice here. You can clearly see him doubting and feeling remorseful for his sin. There is also a distinct pause after the first shot. He gives Jim plenty of time to strike back and kill him. That's probably because Tychus always knew that he is a dead man. Manx is known as a ruthless dictator and he would never grant Tychus his freedom, so that's why Tychus chooses to die from the hands of his best friend after a very eventful journey they spent together, rather than being blown up in pieces by a tyrant many miles away. In Stormgate you don't really find such moral dilemmas, at least not yet, nor particularly complex characters. Even the villains, Kerrigan was cunning, ruthless, intelligent and powerful. Here we just have two demon dorks who can't even catch a squad of humans. The only thing they do is speak with lots of passion, gotta give that to them, but story-wise there are also plenty of questionable moments, like how did the remnants of the resistance manage to gather in Iraq from all over the world, I presume, and fight back? How did they traverse the occupied Earth's surface, swarmed by many infernos? It feels highly unrealistic to me, and in comparison, in StarCraft 2, the Dominion aided Raynor in launching the assault on Char and defeating the Zerg with the artifact, and it makes sense that Raynor could not have done it alone. The game never drops the impression that we're just a rogue squad, a small, really small army, not a big faction, you know? Another cool thing that I want to compare is the arsenal and upgrades. In Wings of Liberty, every time you enter the arsenal room, you can see a lot of familiar units standing in the background. You can read about that, interact with them, and sometimes even find Easter eggs. It feels lively and connected to what has happened in the game. In Stormgate, it's just a room and a girl who is doing some engineering in the background. There is only one mech standing. I know this is kind of nitpicking and, you know, it's not really that important, but this attention to details is what made me a lifetime fan of StarCraft 2. And Stormgate has yet to provide that, but sometimes it does it really well. When you evacuate civilians, those refugees occupy the space in your ship afterwards, and that's a really cool detail. Also, I'm not sure if the storyline of a Chosen One is a good thing to do nowadays. This was a very popular and really overused topic in the media 10 or 20 years ago, and it's a bit tiresome to see that again and again and again. I would much rather follow the team as just rogue survivors rather than another Kerrigan called Amara who is now destined to destroy the Infernals. To me, this concept is just boring because I've read and seen such storylines many times in my life, and even in StarCraft 2 it was a bit blatant as well. But maybe things will change in the next chapters, who knows. On top of that, while StarCraft 2 was obviously much less grim than the original, it still knew how to handle heavy themes. Even the ending of the entire trilogy comes across as a deeply sad one. Jim became a hero, saved humanity and the universe, but at what cost? He lost everyone, from his best friend to the woman he loved, and now he's just rotting away in a bar, living out meaningless days. And who knows how this story would have ended if Kerrigan hadn't walked in. It's depressing, but that's real. I expected more of that in Stormgate. What really disappoints me is how modern game development seems to, smooth every rough edge, making the story and setting softer and more toothless. I can't say Stormgate did not have harsh moments for a game about demons. Well, even if lore-wise they're not exactly demons from mythology, they're kind of like a different race. Nevertheless, there are scenes showing the consequences of war, piles of corpses, and horror in general. But the overall vibe feels different, like a cartoon about demons for a Fortnite-age audience rather than for, 30 or 40 age-old RTS fans, which I think make up the majority. Even if I pull up the stats from my channel, I do not know what causes that. Maybe that awkward dialogue, maybe the odd animations, but Stormgate doesn't leave you with that weight of an unfolding tragedy. Despite all the epic action happening on screen, the game doesn't always manage to pull the right emotions out of you. And again, even with that kind of art style, you can still show plenty of drama. And of course, it's hard to judge the campaign in isolation from future content. This story could end up going nowhere, and all that epic build-up might be for nothing. As for now, we learned and changed almost nothing as well. Kinda a lot happened, and in the end we sort of cleared Earth or something like that from the Infernals, I guess. But what comes next is still a mystery, so I don't know. I might be completely wrong about everything I've just said, because the devs are preparing a big surprise for us in the future, in the next campaign, but for now, that's why the feelings here are mixed. You probably won't remember the storyline a year or two from now, especially if there is no continuation, if there is no second expansion. It just doesn't really hook you, nor do its characters, because they lack charisma. Everything is still pretty entertaining and good, don't get me wrong, but not on a level that you would hope for when it comes from the ex-Blizzard devs. Now let's talk about the gameplay. Overall, it's actually pretty good. I enjoyed almost every mission in this game. You can explore the map, there are different secret areas and there are side quests, but unfortunately most missions could be completed in a similar fashion. Although, to be fair, it was the same way in StarCraft 2. Here you also just build marines and medics and clear out the map, at least on medium difficulty. Same was true for StarCraft 2. But what I liked about Wings of Liberty campaign is that the game cleverly encouraged you to use certain units rather than always sticking to the same strategy. Though you could do that, of course, if you wanted. For example, in the Devil's Playground mission with the Reapers, normally a useless unit in the whole game, they become very handy because they can jump onto the high ground and avoid lava, so the player is now motivated to use them. Or take the Diamondbacks, which can fire while moving and are perfect for intercepting trains in the same mission they are introduced. That's, logical and cool. Stormgate only has about 2 missions like that, if I remember correctly. On the other hand, Stormgate does have a couple of strong advantages. You often encounter bosses, and throughout the campaign there are mini-bosses in the form of more powerful versions of regular units. Your heroes level up and get stronger, you gain more and more experience, and you develop their abilities. This is interesting and lets you approach the game differently compared to many other RTS titles. At the same time, it creates some problems that the game doesn't really fully solve, at least on medium difficulty. Maybe it's different on hard. But again, because of the XP system, your soldiers and heroes become extremely strong and steamroll everything, so in 80% of missions, gameplay ends up looking like this. Your angry human mob just rolls forward like a ball and destroys everything in its path. But even so, it's still fun and I enjoyed most of it, even if it looks a bit bizarre. In all the missions, you can still feel the spirit of old Blizzard and StarCraft, and even though the campaign is only 12 missions long, takes about 4 to 5 hours to complete it if you're playing on a medium difficulty. Still, every one of those missions is made with dedication and they are all really exciting and it's just nice to play them. I never got bored and I was genuinely curious to move from one location to another. All the maps are well designed and many feature great environmental storytelling. It's interesting to explore the map and also complete all those side quests to gain additional credits that you can spend on upgrades later on. So yes, I highly recommend the campaign. It's not perfect, has its flaws, but it still plays very well. I give it a 7 out of 10. Next up is co-op. And here I was disappointed to see that it apparently has not been reworked, I guess? Or maybe it's intentional that some heroes still have the old base building mechanics and even the enemies have old unit skins and old mechanics. I don't know. It's not exactly bad, but it leaves a strange impression, as if co-op was neglected or simply unfinished. That said, there is not a ton to say about it. It's a decent mod with different missions, difficulties, heroes and weak limitations. It's fun, and there's plenty of things to do, and it should be really good with friends. I won't spend much time discussing it because I think it's in a good state if we don't take into account all those inconsistencies with updates, but the whole mode is really fun the same way it was in StarCraft 2. It's a very good feature in this game. Now, the most important part for many people, multiplayer. Remember how they promised us that Stormgate would be the first social RTS as well as have a free v3 hero mode? Well, that's not here, at least for now, and that's a real shame. But we still have 1v1, which has gone through big changes. The most important thing is that instead of creep camps, we now have Stormgates. They appear every few minutes at random points on the map, and if you take control of one, you get a cool unit of your choice. The game has also become a bit faster thanks to simplified economy and quicker worker production. You know, I'm going to say something controversial. Even though all 300 Stormgate fans on Reddit love the new change, personally, I liked creep camps more. Maybe I'm wrong. This is just my opinion, please don't trash me for that. But the creep camps, they force players to make an important early game decision between fighting right away or playing passively for a stronger economy at the cost of early game units. Maybe it was really hard to balance, but I like that a lot. In the new balance, the first unit you get from a gate doesn't seem as impactful as a fully cleared map in the previous patches. And I like that strategic choice more. In the current meta, we've ended up with a system that feels a lot like most other RTS games, where you just need to drop units often, harass and get ahead economically through constant expansion. But it's still cool that this game has some point of interest on the map, and you know, it's better than nothing, I guess. As for the general gameplay, I cannot say that it has changed dramatically. To really understand that, you would need to play at least 100 games with all three factions, but I just don't have that desire right now. Stormgate's multiplayer doesn't feel very engaging to me, and that's one of the main mistakes the developers made. For some reason, many devs think that we all desperately need some hardcore solo competitive RTS action, but that's not really true for the majority of players. I don't really feel like grinding in a game with only 500 players online, where I'll either run into some tryharders in my first match or become that tryhard for most beginners and just ruin their experience. Another problem is that StarCraft 2 is still alive, and you know, there are many other great RTS games that are still on the market, and I don't think many players have a strong motivation to switch to a new RTS. In terms of gameplay, I can't say that Stormgate multiplayer feels much better than StarCraft 2. Sure, it has great graphics now, good sound, impactful unit animations, and also great pacing and interesting combos, but at the same time it's still missing a reworked third faction and tier 3 units. The game is still rough in places, even if it's already decent. But for an average player, or at least for me, there is not that much motivation to grind daily in this game, because, you know, there is nothing wildly fun or unique here that I couldn't get in the more polished StarCraft 2. Maybe if I get tired of StarCraft 2, then I guess yeah, the novelty could be a thing for me, but yes, there are some positives. Convenient hotkeys, good game pace, important upgrades, but at the same time there are still problems like death balls, poor unit readability in battles, and seemingly fewer epic moments overall. By the way, a lot of people praise the amazing pathfinding, and I personally had some issues with that in the campaign, but overall the Versus mode is done well, you can play that, you can enjoy that if you like. In a general sense, I think it's well done and should be enjoyable if you like the game. And I gotta tell you that even though I'm personally not hooked right now, I used to like the 1v1 mode a lot when I first played Stormgate Beta. Don't get me wrong, it's a good multiplayer game, it's fun and engaging. It has a nice skill progression and different playstyles, but my point is backtracking again to the target audience. I think Stormgate devs kind of forget from time to time what makes a great game. It's not esports. Nobody cares about esports and competitive 1v1 if people don't become fans of the game in the first place. I fell in love with StarCraft 2 mainly because of its Wings of Liberty campaign. Then I played 2v2 with my best friend, and only then, slowly I rolled over to 1v1 and started playing competitively. And you know, it took me quite a long time to get hooked with this game mode. And as we know from many polls and even comments under most RTS videos, this is a single player genre. People come first and foremost to experience single player, then co-op, and only then, maybe, some 1v1 or, you know, some esports to watch. I feel that devs should have put even more emphasis on different types of content. Most RTS fans started playing the genre in the 90s and were already quite old to grind 8 hours a day to get some MMR points. We have families, kids, or other things to do in life. And we want a different kind of fun that's more engaging, socializing, and maybe relaxing in a way. And so after finishing the campaign, I find myself back to the same question. There's really not much left for me to do here. I'm not a big fan of co-op, and my friends avoid this game like the plague because of its bad reputation and disastrous launch a year ago. 1v1 doesn't interest me much right now because I have better, in my opinion, competitive games to play around with right now. And, I've been looking for some team games here, but cannot have them right now, unfortunately. Where is that promised social RTS and the unique hero-driven gameplay in 3v3 mode? Yes, we have an editor and some people will be trying to do something cool, but it's still not enough in my opinion. It's not the job of the game modders, it's the job of devs to make that game great. I know they're working on it, but I think it was a bit of a marketing mistake once again to release the game out of early access without giving casuals more things to play with. I know they are running tight on money and they got to do this, but this should have been considered before. Right now, at the time I'm making this review, the game has around 500 active players, and after a brief spike in numbers, we are already seeing the same depressing downward trend. I don't know where it will bottom out, but even 1000 players would be painfully low. 3 or 4 years ago, when hype was through the roof, no one could have imagined Stormgate would flop this hard. But the most frustrating part is that now the game is actually interesting, and even though I criticized this game harshly myself in the past, I now like it a lot more. It's got its own style, it's got personality and strengths, but it's going to take a long time to repair its reputation and fix its marketing mistakes. Here's what Tim Morton, one of Frostgiant's founders, posted on LinkedIn. I do think the devs have reached a new level, but the situation is still dangerous for the company. I'm still not sure they've got the strength to make a real comeback, unless we see some bold, game-changing updates in the near future. I honestly wish them the best. Even though they put themselves in this shitty position, the past year has shown that they can change for the better and turn a bad game into something good and genuinely fun. Still, I want to end on a positive note. Over the past year, Stormgate has come a long way. The game is much better now, and for the first time, I genuinely enjoyed its single-player content. Who knows what the future holds, but in this current state, it's no longer embarrassing to recommend it to friends. It has its own design, its own appeal, and its own unique features that I really adore. In other words, it's slowly turning me from a stranger to a fan, but they need to hurry up. Now, what do you think about the new Stormgate? Leave your opinion in the comments. And that's all from me. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more RTS content and check out my take on Red Alert 3. Have a good day and see you next time.